Hi, internets. It's Jake, and this is Miniature Rain Domain. Welcome once again to a live crafting build where I'm going to continue building what I started a week ago on during BrigadeCon. One second, I appear to be having some audio issues. All right. I don't know if there's no audio going out or I just can't hear myself. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. This is pretty much every broadcast. Last week during BrigadeCon, there were some major technical issues for broadcasts across the board, and it was frustrating. Okay, mute that tab. There we go. Sorry about that. My technical glitches. Nelson, I see you over there. Welcome. Thanks for letting me know that you could hear me just fine. I almost didn't do this because I fell asleep. I was sitting on the couch a little bit ago and I just fell asleep. I think I'm still catching up from BrigadeCon. So I got coffee in my Hard Rock Cafe. Oh, you can't see that. Hard Rock Cafe Heidelberg mug that I got in the mid-90s in Heidelberg, Germany. The mug, not the coffee. I don't think coffee ages like fine liquors. Wim! I see you there as well. All right, so the plan here tonight is I'm going to craft for a little while. I'm going to keep an eye on the live chat and see who stops by, see what's going on. And I'm just going to start, or rather continue with where I left off, but we'll do a little update here. So let me adjust the camera down. And you know what? I think the camera is too high. Give me 1 second here. All right. Let's try this. These lights are blowing my face out. I'm using these daylight lights to light my workstation so I can see with my old eyes. That's probably a little better. And let's see. Yeah, there we go. Not quite so. Wow, it's all right. I should have had this all set up beforehand, but like I said, I fell asleep on the couch. For some reason, this isn't sitting flat. Makes for great TV, huh? Greetings, Amanda. See Amanda in the chat as well. Amanda is going to be joining in our Dragon Grand campaign over on the RPG Construct channel. What is this? This is not what we're building. That is an entirely different map that I made of something. Here we go. So as a reminder, this is what we're working on. This is a ruined jungle temple, 10 inches wide, 15 inches long, with a Lost-inspired ritual pool in the middle here. I don't know that I sacrificed this design because of the time, but we may do something later. I've got a tip from my friend Greg over on the DM Scotty's crafting forum. Gave me a really cool tip for how to make this transfer over really nicely. So we may explore that, and that will allow me to put these designs in as well. Over here is the altar and the raised dais. And then as a reminder, I'm going to be doing something with the dais, this round piece that comes out over the edge of the pool, where we'll be using these plastic skulls, and this plastic skull, not these, and I'll probably cut it here. The idea is to have it kind of underneath there and I'm thinking maybe it's going to be something like, I've done this before, but what I'm thinking is maybe the eye sockets are where the water fills in. But the idea is that this is an old abandoned temple. So ultimately this is going to be stagnant water in here. We're going to do some cool stuff with paint, possibly with 2-part resin to fill this out. So, oh, and sorry, over here, we're actually probably going to be doing this part tonight. These are archways. I went with very angular approach because I'm thinking sort of slightly Mayan, Aztec kind of inspiration. And for these skulls over the archways of the door that we're going to do, sorry, that's probably quite loud. I bought this bag of these little skull rings. Let's deck my fingers all out in these. These are rings for babies. Anyway, what I'm going to do is cut off these little edges here, and these skulls are going to be above the door here, and we'll do some cool stuff with dry brushing and stuff to make them look like they're part of the stonework. So yeah, I got this whole bag for $1. There's like 70 skulls in there or something. And then I may do some stuff later with skull piles with this bag of skulls. I got skulls for days, y'all. All right. And here is the actual piece that we started work on last week. So you can see we did the, if we look at our drawing here, and I'll orient it so you can see it. Careful, I just pulled on that. That we've got the base, we've got the stairs here. We did the ring around the pool, and then I went with pattern E, primarily because of the time. I'm kind of wishing if I knew I wasn't going to rush through this, or would get it all done then, and I was going to take a couple episodes to do this, I would have gone maybe with, I really like pattern D, pattern C, I like all of them. Anyway, pattern looks really good. I'm wondering, because I was doing some of this really late at night, and I know I went through, I had to have gone through all of these. Maybe I didn't. I think that's part of the problem here. See, this is something, I'm just going to get into it. This is something that I think turns a lot of people off to this kind of crafting, is I first drew these block patterns with a razor blade. If you happen to catch this, if not, you can go back on the channel. You can watch the 4-hour live build that I did with these patterns. And what I did was I drew each of these bricks with a razor. So some of them came out kind of crooked, I think. But then you got to go over them again. You don't have to, but I like to go over them with these pencils because it gets right down in the cracks. It spreads it open a little bit, gives it that slightly beveled look, and I kind of trace around each block, and it gives it a rounded appearance. And what that's going to do is when we get to the painting phase, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to black bomb the crap out of this. This whole thing is just going to get coated in a black acrylic paint, and that's going to get down in these cracks. So then as we start applying, I'm going to go with shades of brown. As we start applying the darker and to lighter tones, you're going to see that dark just sits down in the recesses. And then we'll probably finish her off with a nice burnt umber wash. Get some happy little floor tiles in here. So you should be able to even see with the weird contrast on the camera here. The color balance seems way off. You see that they're starting to pop. Havoc Bringer guys here. Hey there, Havoc. Amanda says, can you make a metal stencil to push into the styrofoam to shorten the time? Interesting that you say that, because one of the things I'm looking at doing, a technique we're going to look at a little bit later, is a form of stencil. Now, technically, you could probably make a metal stencil, but if you think about that, the amount of work that goes into creating a stencil, and, you know, I'm not entirely certain I would use this same brick pattern. You could probably come up with a certain amount of it and do like a stamp. And there are some people that do. DM Scotty has a Tilescapes system that he does where he uses this same kind of foam to create a stamp pattern that he then sponges paint on, and rather than actually cut in, he stamps down to get that kind of pattern on there. And that, I mean, you get really great results with that, but that's not what I'm going for here. The reason I do it this way is because I like to get that cut with the razor blade. I think ultimately I would do this anyway, even when I do the potential shortcut with stenciling to get the patterns in. I think I would still go over each brick because I want it to have that slightly irregular look of stone blocks. Now, what my friend Greg mentioned, and we're going to look at later on in this area that I'm drawing right now, doing some patterning on, as well as getting some patterns over here, is you use your graph paper and you draw to scale what you're going to put on your tile. And then you just cut it out like a little stencil, and then you draw with a ballpoint pen over your stencil, transferring by impression those shapes and patterns over to your foam. Now, like I said, I'll probably still go over some of that with a knife, or kind of touch it up with a ballpoint pen afterwards, because like these decorative patterns that I was just talking about wouldn't represent, like they wouldn't necessarily have been carved into the floor as much as like these aren't intended to be carved. These are to represent like, hey, these are individual blocks that were placed into the floor. So that's kind of the logic behind that. Amanda asked, what about a 3D printer? I don't have the $300 to $1,200 or more lying around that I would need for a 3D printer. There are some great 3D printing options out there, and I really know so little about 3D printing. It's something I'd like to get into at some point, but something like this, I think you could design in the 3D space. You could design the entire temple. Actually, you could design the whole thing, textures and everything, and then you would have to adjust it pieces that your particular 3D printer bed can accommodate based on the size. Then you have to print it, and my understanding is that, you know, a section like this could take hours to print. So, you know, I think it's just a transfer of your creative energies, and I don't have the same skills in the 3D digital 3D environment that I do working with these craft materials. Now, that said, this is a perfect opportunity for an unpaid unpaid endorsement. I did this the other night. These are some early designs that I still have yet to paint. A friend of mine that has access to a 3D printer printed these out. And these are actually from, these are called True Tiles. And they are from Wylock's Armory. My friends Ryan and Bill, you most commonly know them over on the DM Scotty's Crafts and Games. And he's designed this system based on his tiling system that he does out of cardboard and chipboard, where you can have multiple types of pieces. You can insert stairs. They've got a whole bunch of systems on there. I think you can look it up at True Tiles and check out. They just had an incredibly successful Kickstarter. Yeah, Nelson says Wylock kicked some serious booty too. Yeah, that dude That dude's got a great video. If you know who DM Scotty, you know what? Even if you don't know who DM Scotty is, because DM Scotty's the one who first inspired me to get into crafting. And, you know, while I got you in here, Nelson, I'm going to give you a big shout out because, brother, you're actually the one probably going, I'd have to look on the channel now and see, but probably some 3+ years ago, I built that spider. I did my first video. Well, actually, first I built the spider and I posted it on the forums. You're like, dude, you got to do a video on this. And I was, you know what? It was actually almost exactly 3 years ago because it was in November. Because I was going to launch in the following January with some videos. And you were like, dude, you got to show how you did this spider. And so I did a video real quick. I think it wound up being like a 15 or 20-minute video. It remains my most viewed video on the channel. I think it has somewhere around 30,000 views now. And that's because of you, brother. You're the reason I got started on this channel. And 3 years ago, almost to the day, I'm sitting at around 4,500 subscribers. I've branched off into online gaming. And, you know, Nelson, not only did you inspire me to do that, you were the one that first told me about the OSG, the one-shot group, which is how I then ultimately got involved in the RPG Brigade and how I got involved in Absolute Tabletop. Well, I'm not like a part of it, but a part of that community. So, man, you know what, Nelson? Dude, would you like, I'm going to do an impromptu. If I send you a link, do you want to pop on in here for a few and hang out while we do some crafting, man? Let me, I'm going to do that anyway. It's your choice. Because I have a surprise anniversary and the dude who inspired it all is right here. Heck yeah, I remember the Frost Colossus game. You know what? We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to send you a message. So you're seeing stuff happen live on the broadcast. Let's go. See if that link works for you. If you hop in here, you hang out for a little bit, and we'll talk about that Colossus game. Man, I didn't even think about that. 3 years since I started this channel. I got to get more videos on here. So yeah, this part right here, while we wait to see if Nelson, there he is. I can't hear you, brother.
Sorry, I had your video coming in through my headset at the same time.
Dude, I'm so glad you popped in because it wasn't even going through my head until just now. Ladies and gentlemen, Nelson of Infinite Roleplay fame with us tonight. Yeah, man, you remember that when I first posted that spider just because it was something I did, and then you were like, dude, you got to show how you did that.
Hell yeah, man.
And I was like, oh, crap. And in fact, I think you said, if you don't show us how you did that, I'm going to do it. Because then you started building that mega spider.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man, he's going to steal my idea. I got to get in there. Yeah, and then, you know, like you said, eventually through DM Scotty's page, you kept mentioning something about how you were doing stuff over at the OSG. And it took me a while to figure out. And I think I finally asked you. I was like, you know, what's the OSG? And, man, that day, going to the OSG just changed my gaming life. It really did. And your Frost Colossus game, I played a Paladin of Light. If I remember correctly, I think we were 8th level.
No, it was like I believe the Frost Colossus game was 10th.
Were we 10?
Yeah,
I know it was the first time I'd played a high level game. You were running back to back sessions. You ran us through it and TPK'd us, and then you literally took like a 5-minute break and went and ran another group through that game.
Yep. It was a fun day though. Very fun.
Oh yeah, that was a blast. I remember because I had never played a paladin before, and I had an ability that those games are still up on your channel, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, if you go digging through now, you know what? Afterwards, later, I'll put a link down in the description here of this video to Nelson's channel, to Infinite Roleplay, and to that video, because that was a blast to play in that game. Nelson is an incredible storyteller and an unabashed power gamer, and just all about massive amounts of damage and colossal enemies. And I just remember that I had an ability that if I had done it, possibly could have killed the Colossus instead of him killing me. And I think ultimately, if I remember correctly, I think I got taken over.
Yeah, it was that that cone attack that the Colossus was doing.
Yeah. I basically screwed up. I didn't use a common paladin ability that I had. But you know what? That was such an epic fight. You ran such an awesome and epic game. And you kind of continued it on with the next group of adventurers that came through because you TPK'd us. And I don't remember if they wound up slaying the Colossus or not.
I did the second Colossus game almost like a pseudo continuation, like they were the second group. And spoiler alert, yeah, they unfortunately got TPK'd too. They almost beat the Colossus.
Havoc Bringer guy says, I also like his drawings. Yeah, man, you got some mad skills over there with you've been releasing a lot of artwork over the last, well, probably over the last year, I'd say, since you've been working on the Saturday morning. Well, why don't you tell us about it? Go ahead and take the stage. Tell us about your Saturday morning D&D. Because I haven't played in it yet, and it's something I really want to.
It started off. Yeah, it started off as Saturday morning D&D. Like I wanted to do something with Dungeons and Dragons, and I was toying with the idea of doing a supplement that was super deadly D&D, and then the other supplement, which was the Saturday morning D&D, about like taking Dungeons and Dragons and pushing it a little bit more ridiculous in power scale. And it just blew up into what's now Saturday morning tabletop. And it's all inspired by like my love of cartoons, me growing up, the sort of wonky wackiness that sort of comes with old 80s fantasy cartoons like Hanna-Barbera. And even some Darkwing Duck sort of inspiration.
Yeah, and it's I've been seeing, over the last quite a long time as you've been posting the artwork and stuff that you've been doing. I mean, this is pretty much 100% you, isn't it? You and your play testers.
Yeah.
Kind of developing an entire system, a cast of characters. You have different tiers of play that kind of range from more of your light, like PG flavored, up to more mature themed games and things like that, correct?
Yeah. I'm actually, if YouTube is not liking me right now, but I'm actually starting an adventure quest that is a more mature in theme and just structure.
Very cool.
I've done like in BrigadeCon, I ran the Reign of the Squirrel King, which is
just an awesome name.
A little bit more fun. It was actually 4 hours without combat, which is kind of unbelievable.
Wow.
But they sat there and they asked all the questions and looked at all the angles, and they role played their way through it.
Awesome. That's very cool. I'm gonna jump over to the chat real quick. The Mapernomicon stopped by. Hey, man. Yeah, both me and Rob are live. I commented on Rob's post a little bit before he posted it. that he was trying to compete with me because he's doing a campaign prep for his Lore Keepers game. And he's running that live right now. And he said, yeah, you're just trying to steal my limelight, man. So thanks for stopping by, Matt. There was a question in here from Hellifrax. The styrofoam I get always has these little balls texture, can be covered. So that is the, I can't remember the exact name for it. It's a polystyrene foam. I think they call it extruded or something like that. But it's commonly what you find in packaging material with your VCRs. It's 2016. Who has a VCR? I'm aging myself here. With your DVD players and any kind of electronics and stuff like that will have that kind of packaging in there. That's actually some of the first builds that I ever did were using that kind of styrofoam. And unless you're layering on thick loads of paint or a plastic dip or something like that, you really can't cover that texture. It tends to just show through. It's a great starting point. I very quickly moved away from it, and I have absolutely no desire to work in that material. This material here is I covered it in the first video, but this is dollar store foam core. It's roughly a 1/4 inch, very flexible, and takes texture really well. And a 20-inch by 30-inch sheet only costs $1 at the Dollar Tree in the United States. And I understand that that's to acquire in some of the overseas regions for whatever reason that is. I guess we've had this conversation before with the DMG that in Australia the styrofoam is super expensive, but glue sticks are like a dime a dozen. You still there, Nelson? Did I lose you, or are you just being quiet, uncharacteristically quiet?
Oh no, I'm here, dude. This is your thing. I'm letting you do your thing, brother.
No, that's cool. I didn't know if I lost you. You were just, like I said, you were being uncharacteristically quiet. You're welcome. You're welcome to pop out anytime you want. I wanted to give you a chance since we had that sudden realization of the infinite role play inspiration. I wanted to give you a chance to come in and so you're welcome to stay and hang out, or you can drop out anytime you want. You won't hurt my feelings.
No, I'm cool. I'm here. You want to do the chat with a little bit? Go to chat. I'm here for you, brother.
We got the good vibes. Hi, I'm new here from the Facebook group of DM Scotty. Welcome to the good vibes. 4 hours without combat sounds like a good. 4 hours without combat. That sounds like a good game. Years ago, I used to run entire adventures where it was mostly RPing and skill rolls. It's lots of fun when you get the right group of people. Yeah, those can make some really good games. Last year, I ran Point of no. What is Chris Stratton Smith's thing? It's something inspiration. Font of Inspiration. Does that sound right? It's something inspiration. But it's on Drive-Thru RPG, or at least it was. It's called oh my gosh, what is that called? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, I ran the video last year. It's a horror themed game. The something desperation. All right, I got to look this up for you because I don't want to misrepresent them. Anyway, it was a horror-themed murder mystery kind of a D&D 5e game that the players, in fact, Wylock was one of my players in that. He had requested to play in an online game, and that group wound up for, I think we went 2.5 to 3 hours in that game, which wound up being like 5 hours, without ever having any kind of combat, because they were all about. There was a quick scene that took place in a bookstore. Well, it was supposed to be a quick scene. Ask the bookstore owner a couple questions, and then move on, investigate something else. We spent over an hour in that bookstore just improv role playing because they were just getting into character and truly investigating what was going on in this town. And it was so much fun. And then we had, I think, 2 or 3 combats at the end. As I'm looking for this game, I'm suddenly remembering, I think it's actually called The Children of Despair. Font of Inspiration, because yes, I did a interview with him after I ran it. So the video is called Children of Despair, a D&D 5e one-shot, just about a year ago. 4 hours and 48 minutes, and we had an absolute blast in that game with the RP. You really got to get the right group of people, though, to do something like that. So yeah, back to the good vibes. Welcome. Feel free if you have any questions to throw them into the chat, and we'll do what we can to answer them. I just hope for an RP game like that, but my home group play D&D like Skyrim. Makes me miss RP a little bit. Yeah, I've got a group of murder hobos that I run games for. They come from very much a Skyrim and Diablo kind of Dragon's Age kind of background. And so they expect a lot of magic items, a lot of loot. They're hoarders. And you know what's perfectly fine. I just adjust my style for that group, and they're actually the recipient of most of this 3D terrain that I make, because they love getting into these dungeons. And I think because of their video gaming background, they like having the physical space to move around in. I think if 5th edition hadn't come around, that group would have been all over 4th edition and the kind of tactical miniature style of play that 4th edition was primarily.
I love terrain because it gives you that, like when you're at a game table, a lot of people that might not be sort of inspired to role play or think of certain things, they see like the little nodule that you put on there, like a little greeble, and it just gets their minds going.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, especially with that group of players, though, they're getting wise to it now and they start looking for them. And I've got a plan to do this with this build here. I like to hide things in plain sight. I had in my pyramid, I had a section of the final encounter room that I waited for characters to try to move through a certain area. And then I would reach in and I would pull on a piece of treasure that was attached to it. And a whole section of floor came up and there was an acid pit underneath it. And they were like, what? I had where I hid in a big area like this was hidden, where I had cut in. I actually had a cobblestone bridge section that the players had actually passed through to get to an objective, get a key. And on the way back, they're like, all right, well, we're just going to walk all the way back here to the room. And I'm like, hold on a minute. When you get to here, and I reached in and I pulled the middle section of that bridge out, and then I threw down some tentacles, and there was a big encounter that took place there. I love being able to, I mean, obviously you can do that kind of stuff super easy with Theater of the Mind, but to do that right in front of their faces.
Yeah. It's an entirely awesome. Different experience.
Yeah. And you can't get that same effect with them in Theater of the Mind. So, all right, I'm gonna jump over here. This was where we left off, and I'm taking a kind of inspecting these pieces because it was getting to be close to 4 o'clock in the morning. My eyes were sticking together. I was super tired. So, what's going on here? Now, I'm regretting. I got a couple years ago. I got this. It's like a matting board or like a mounting board for pictures and stuff. It's probably about not even an eighth of an inch thick. I think it's like a 16th of an inch thick. It's good, clean black cardboard. But the reason I'm kind of regretting using this is I was looking at this piece. I don't know if you can see it on the camera here. Right before I turned on the camera, I set this piece down, and maybe I know my mat is warped because I store it on its edge and it gets hit with the heat gun a lot. But my base is not sitting flat, and I can turn it sideways and look at it, and it does have a little bit of a curve to it. It's the downside when you're doing this kind of terrain like this. The foam and the cardboard, even when you attach them, as the glue dries, I think it shrinks just a little bit and tends to pull that in and causes a little bit of warp.
I was just gonna ask, have you ever like stuck in the cardboard those long bamboo skewers that you usually get for like cookouts and stuff?
Yeah, I've done that for some of those kind of bills with the corrugated cardboard. In case you're wondering, Nelson's talking about these. You can usually get a pack of this is, I think, 2 different kinds, 2 or 3 different packages. I actually liked these thicker ones a little bit better. The last batch I got weren't all that great, but you get these skewers at like Walmart or any grocery store, really, for doing shish kebabs and things like that. And they're great for a variety of things, for monster teeth, for pit traps, for, as Nelson said, you can put them inside the corrugation to add rigidity. I've used them for cross braces. They actually serve as the yard arms on the Evangeline ship that I built. There's just so many uses for these. I highly recommend having these on hand. I have heard of people like on the backside here actually gluing strips down to try to counter the curve. Lily was talking about doing something like that with his recent build that he posted. I think he's just Jeremy Lilly, man, that dude's a trooper. He hung with the entire broadcast for BrigadeCon, the entire 4-hour broadcast, and he started building in foam core. He had never really been building in foam core. He'd been building only in cardboard, and he's got some amazing. He runs an Asian themed D&D game. If I remember correctly, it's called Black Lotus White Jade. I'd love to see some of his gameplay from that. He runs it for a home group. So he's got some cool pieces that he's working on. He's tried some new techniques with using a PVA and water mixture to seal the foam. Nelson, have you ever done that? Have you used the watered down glue to kind of like seal the whole thing before painting it?
Before painting it, not really. That the foam that you're using right now, it doesn't take a lot of paint, but I like to do that last bit at the end, the watered down PVA. And sometimes it gives it a almost plasticky sheen, like if you were playing with dungeon tiles from what is that company? I keep thinking of Dungeon World, but it's not Dungeon World. Dungeonscapes or something. It gives it that same look, that same finished look, yeah. And it helps with I'm always paranoid while building terrain, so I always build it like really tough and strong, because you never know, like if the paint will come off, and right. So I seal everything.
Yeah, and I know I've done some sealing with PVA where I think I tried to do it on air dry clay. Man, that is crooked. I'm just seeing now that this line from here to here is very skewed, which is fine because 3/4 of an inch of this are actually going to be below the edge, as I'll show you in a minute. But I've seen some people, they seal it in order to protect it so they can do a spray paint job. Some people seal it because it adds durability. And like you said, this is not a very, well, it's a kind of porous foam. It's very resistant to absorption. It's not like a sponge, so it's not gonna like suck it into its pores and strengthen it in that manner, which is why there's a couple reasons why. Obviously, for this long of a wall, this is not sturdy enough for a build, especially if I were to texture the other side, because you cut into here, you create, I mean, this already, I could just snap this at these bricks. And then because this is a 3D piece now, a lot of people wouldn't even do what I'm doing, you know, putting the walls on here, because it does kind of inhibit visibility. But I still like to have them because I view my pieces not just as functional terrain, but I also view them as like dioramas. I'm already seeing something I don't like. We can fix that. We'll fix it in post. So anyway, I've got this poster board stuff, and the plan is to kind of glue it, sandwich it in between the inside and outside walls for to add overall stability. And then obviously you're going to lose some of this flex because it's going to be attached the full length here. The full length here because yeah, just the way it's going to attach. So that's going to give it some additional rigidity. And then we're going to go over across the top here. I do caps. So we'll actually create a cap that finishes this off and really makes it look nice. But before we can, now I've got two more pieces here for the other long wall that I've got to cut the bricks, draw them in, texture them. And then we've also got to do the doors. And I think just for a little change of pace, since I've got this one all ready to go, before we can get in and do any gluing, we need to create our doors. And let's jump back to the drawing here. So this is what our door design looks like, and this is to scale. Now I kind of did a hasty job over this, so what I'm actually going to do is I've got some additional graph paper here. I've got this stuff that's 5 squares to the inch, but on the other side it's 4 squares to the inch. I don't know because I think that, yeah, make sure I use the right one. You can usually tell. Yeah, this is the 5. So you can see the 5 to an inch, and then on the back side is the 4 to an inch. So we'll flip over here, and it's perforated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a stencil. Because I have to do, looking at the drawing here, I've got 3 entryways. Now I toyed with the idea of actually putting another entryway here and here, and maybe having them be like rubbles coming in and tree roots and stuff. But I like the idea of that, since this is some kind of a ritual room, sacrifices or prayer or summoning, whatever it may be, that I like the idea that there's only these 3 entrances. So that's what we're going to do. But we've got 2 sides to the wall, and these 2 pieces plus the cardboard piece, and we want them to all match up. So that's where it's going to get, having the stencil is going to be extremely helpful. So I'm going to grab, I'll find where it is. I've recently rearranged all my tools, so naturally I can't find anything. I have several, geez, where did I put those? I have several, here they are. I have several of these kind of things. So we can get precise angles and all that goody stuff. But typically, you're running from a piece to a piece. You don't have to worry about it. A piece to a piece. Listen to me talking in precise terms. If you move from a piece to a piece, you're going to get exactly what you're looking for.
Hey, that's how they used to do measurements back in the medieval days.
Yeah, use the length from your wrist to your elbow, or the length of your actual foot, or what have you. What I was trying to say though was, if you go from a specific point to another point, you don't need, to set complex angles or anything like that. I know that, excuse me, the space, I'm just going to double check that this is in fact 1/4 inch grid. Yeah. So I know for a fact that the floor, and I'm going to go down here. I'm going to stay as close to the edge as I can so I can salvage some of this paper. The inner, well, I got to accommodate for that too. So I'm going to go over here. The inner area of the door, the footprint, if you will, is 2 inches. And that's based on, I'm going to turn this around so you can see that better as I'm doing this. And that's based on this dimension here. So, and a lot of this, when I did this drawing, the original drawing, I just freehand it. And then, let's see, I did 2 inches for the height of it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a lot of that kind of me counting to myself. I think you guys got a taste of that in the last video at BrigadeCon. Especially near the end there, I was doing a lot of mumbling. So then we got 1 inch at the top here. And then, of course, all you have to do is connect your top and bottom piece. And that's going to give us the dimension for, what to cut out. So that's our negative space for our doorway. But I've decided now in the past, and I did this on my tomb, my mummy's tomb, the pyramid, is for a lot of the archways that I did, I just etched along the edge into the foam and drew smaller bricks like they were embedded in. But for this, I want these to be raised out. So we're actually going to be creating not just a template for cutting out the foam, but for cutting the actual frame that's going to go around each of these doors. So I have, nope, that's not right. See, I said this before, I'll say it again. My grandpa always told me measure twice, cut once. I can tell you how many times I've had to scrap pieces because I was in a rush and I wound up cutting everything off by 1/4 inch. Well, if you watch the video, the part 1 video, you'll see that I did not check my measurements before I started planning everything out. And my 20 inch by 30 inch dollar store craft foam boards were actually 20 inch by 29.75 inches, which threw off all of my measurements. And I was kind of hasty on some of my cuts, so I'm going to have to do some trimming on the main base piece before I can glue the walls, because I can see already things aren't lining up straight. And then I talked about this in the first video a lot. You'll see I have lines kind of drawn. Some of these were mistakes, but I have lines kind of drawn in here because I could draw this all. I could cut this out and put this in all as a single piece. But I like to think about what the people who built this, what size did they make their pieces? What shape were the blocks? I try to think in terms of a 28 millimeter miniature. If you think of a standard human size 28 millimeter miniature as approximately a 6-foot measurement. And I know that's wonky. Let's imagine millimeters as feet. But if you think in those terms, it helps you to visualize how big in scale your blocks are. So I actually have over here, these are the home group murder hobos I was talking about. These are the minis that they use. A lot of them are just repurposed. Either some of these are from recent, like Princes of the Apocalypse and the Elemental Evil and Out of the Abyss and stuff like that. Some of them are repurposed Mage Knight figures. This is from my monk player who recently acquired a set of magical wings. But we've got a couple here. Let me use this wizard. That is roughly a human-sized wizard. And so you can see that's the size of the doorway that you have there. And you can kind of see to scale how big the bricks are. So it helps to visualize that when you start thinking about how big should I make something or how small. You know, you could make an argument that these stairs are not functional because I can't set a mini on the stairs. But, and yeah, I could have made them that way. I could have made them at about 3/4 or even an inch. But then I would have had stairs going all the way out into the middle. It would have looked weird. In terms of gameplay, you're either here, you can say, yeah, I'm on the stairs, or I'm in the pool. I'm in the stagnant water for whatever reason. And you can see I went with 1-inch grid. I'm actually leaning more and more towards Wylock's logic that he uses for his tiles. The moving 1-inch grid up to 1 1/4. It gives you a lot more maneuverability. It accommodates the standard size bases a lot more. And for some of these builds, you end up with really tight quarters. I've got some builds I'm going to be doing later this winter of a couple of ships. They're going to make the Evangeline look like child's play. And if I did it in 1-inch grids, it's going to be such tight, even play quarters. Plus, I want the impressiveness of taking what would be a 25-inch ship, moving it up by 1/4 inch and turning it into a 30+ inch ship. Let's see. Havoc Bringers. He said he was leaving, but then I saw more comments. Or maybe somebody else was leaving that he said goodbye to. All right. Good night, Amanda. I guess I missed it when I wasn't keeping up with the chat. Havoc Bringer. Yeah, I'm a fan of reskinning. I assume you're talking about when I was talking about these minis. Yeah, I got a hold of a bunch of these, and sometimes it's as simple as just, actually, Nelson, I don't know if you guys can really see it on here, but the base of this figure is actually homemade flock using your coffee ground recipe from back in the day.
Yeah.
I have several of those containers of that flock from when you did that video way back when, and I still use them.
Hey, it's high octane flock, man.
Yeah, so Nelson's got a great video on his channel somewhere. You got to put a little bit of effort into it. I'm just looking over my shoulder to see if I can find what I did with those. I was going to show them. But
yes, Havoc Bringer, really coffee.
Yeah, so you take your coffee grounds, or I use those coffee pods from a Keurig, and those work just fine, just as well. And you just take them and you have to dry them out first. You let them dry out for a couple days. You can dry them in the oven at low temp, things like that. But you take those Maprogramicon coffee. As much coffee as you drink Maprogramicon, you probably got homemade flocking for days. You dry them out, and then you just pick what colors you want, Now you're going to end up with muted colors because of the darkness of the coffee grounds, but you mix the paints in, and you're going to end up with this really clumpy mixture. And then you just lay it out on some tin foil or something, let it dry again. And I'm going to warn you, especially if you do a bunch of green, it's going to look like you're drying weed in your,
yes.
It's going to look like you have clumps of Primo Bud drying on your crafting area. And then the final step is taking I used actually a wine cork and a cheap dollar store coffee strainer, or just a little hand strainer thing. And you just kind of like mortar and pestle it through there until you end up with these little containers that have all these little bits of flock in them that you can then use on your miniature bases.
You know, another way that a lot of other people besides coffee, I know you just mentioned the darker and the more muted colors, is that they use well, not sandpaper, sawdust.
Yes, sawdust. I actually have some. I'm telling you, I recently I moved everything around in my craft room, and I cannot find jack right now. I can't find my flock. I have this drawer over here where I put all my glues and stuff. I cannot find what I did with that flock. I've got a bunch of stuff behind me on the shelves. All right. Anyway, Ryan Biesiker from the DM Scotty's Craft and Games hooked me up with several bags of different grades, I guess, of sawdust. And it's the same thing. You mix it with the craft paint, and you can get better coloring with that because, you know, the sawdust is a lot lighter colored than the coffee. But it's super easy to do, and if you drink a lot of coffee, you've got the stuff there. You've got what you need right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to recycle. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Else we do.
All right, so let's jump back over here. Havoc Bringer says, "Mom, I can explain about all the green homemade flock looking like Bud." Brian Marshall has dropped in. Brian, I am not going to take credit for that miniature of this wizard here, because this was it's actually a hero click. I'm sure somebody might recognize what hero this is. Maybe it's from a Mage Knight. I don't remember. A friend of mine used to work for FASA back in the day. I didn't know this until I'd been working with her for like 5 years at the publishing company I worked at. But she actually went to school with the founder of FASA and worked there for the entire 20-year run of the company. And he later went on to do some work with WizKids, and had sent her and her kids a bunch of stuff. And her kids are all grown, but I'm not. So she gave me a box full of a bunch of these minis. And this was in there. And I needed a wizard, so I just repurposed him. And he was already painted up, pre-painted. It's rare to have such a good paint job on a pre-painted mini, unless you're buying the higher end ones. This one looks really good. Brian actually was one of the players in my first ever game that I ran on the OSG, an old 4th edition Chris Perkins adventure called Pray for Smiley Bob. And I think we ran that at first level. Alan Holloway, hey man, welcome. Aaron S, welcome. And anybody else that's just lurking, welcome. So yeah, a little sidetrack there to talk about homemade flock. Like I said, I'm going to link to Nelson's channel down below. Give you the credit for all these things, but I might, with your blessing, Nelson, because I definitely don't want to take anything away from you. I might do some updated videos on some of that kind of stuff, on the techniques, but I definitely don't want to, step on something you've already done.
It's all good, brother. Everybody's got a different scope to look, different eyes. So I'm sure you probably have a method to the madness that is unique to yourself, man. Share it with everybody.
I was going to cut this out. All right. Yes. Because a couple people in the chat there were asking for tutorials on that. So I'm actually going to try this. I was going to cut this out and trace it. Of course, it's paper, not cardstock. And I do have a light box, but I want to haul that thing out. So I'm kind of thinking what I might do here. I'm going to line that edge up. This was Greg Lewis over on the DM Scotty boards. Greg is an awesome dude, does a lot of his own terrain crafting, and he is an incredibly talented artist. They're put up right now because I'm looking for frames for them, but I have some prints that he gave me earlier in the year of some artwork that he's done. Phenomenally talented tattoo artist as well. And he recently told me about this technique that he does where he uses a lot of patterning, and all he does is he draws his pattern on the I feel like I should still be using my straight edge. He draws the pattern on his graph paper like this, and then takes a ballpoint pen and just traces over it above the graph paper, or rather above the foam core. And what should be happening is the pressure I'm putting on the paper should be transferring through to the foam core. I know it's not rocket science. It's a pretty straightforward thing. It is destructive to your template. So one of the things that he recommended is if you have patterns you want to do over and over again, make copies, photocopies of them, or scan them, and you will be able to reuse those. Like if you're going to do a set of dungeon tiles, like he showed me a bunch of his patterns for sewer themed tiles. So I appreciate that. Shout out to Greg for sharing that. And then I'm actually gonna transfer these brick pattern lines, and then we'll see how it looks on the foam core. I've never done this before, so I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it, because what's happening is with the ballpoint pen, and a lot of it, I talked in the last video about the grain of the foam core. There is a definite grain, and if you can feel it when you're cutting and when you're drawing on it, that you get more tension one direction than the other direction. Oops. I'm feeling a little bit of that. Like as I was drawing the vertical lines and the angled lines, the pen feels like it wants to wander a little bit, like it's getting caught in that grain, against that grain, if that makes sense. All right. And then that should have been at the edge. Well, let's see what we got here. Not bad. I don't know if you can see that. Turn off this light and you get some of the. There we go. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think what I'm going to do is use this just as the guide for cutting. Because I am going to do a transfer here. I guess I should have my. Something's blocking my drawer. There we go. Gotta have that trusty razor knife. Now, this is entirely up to how much you trust your own hands. For certain cuts, and you'll see in the first video, I did for the walls and stuff like that, I definitely used my metal ruler to make sure I was getting nice straight cuts. But for shorter cuts, I feel pretty confident that I can follow my lines and keep a nice straight line going. A tip that Wylock, when he stopped by on the last video, gave that was very helpful: when your knife starts to get dull and you can feel it pulling, take your knife where you might be cutting at an angle like this, let's see if through your foam, tilt your knife blade down so it's closer to parallel with the surface of your foam. You're going to use more of that blade than just that 1/4 inch tip. And you're going to be drawing against the fresher part of the blade, so you can get more life out of your blades that way. So that was a fantastic tip by Wylock. I'd love to do, probably won't fit for this build, but I'd love to do some videos where I just do a live build where it's not even a build, it's the shadow's getting in the way. I think I need to use my edge just because I can't see the impression from the pen very well. I like to do some sculpting with or carving, I guess you'd call it, with the foam, especially the pink foam, where I'm working on trying to make some crates out of pink foam insulation, where it's basically taking a small square of pink foam insulation, carving it to look like a crate, and then Ryan asked me to do this video like a year ago. Seen anybody do it yet, other than related to like candy? I know it sounds weird, but related to candy, where, see, I'm not sure. That looks thicker on one side than the other. Anyway, I have a way to make, you can make your own molds with some Legos to make your mold box, something that you want to mold, and a couple dollars of silicone caulk. It's very quick and pretty darn easy. And then those molds, the silicone caulk will hold up against hot glue and like plaster and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how I feel about this, because it looks like one side of this came out slightly thicker. Let me see how it looks on here. You know what? That's not right. Yeah, that's better. How far in is that supposed to be? That's only supposed to be an inch in. Is that right? See, I'm talking to myself. This is where I'm talking through what I've done to see if it makes sense. And that definitely doesn't make sense. So in my mind there, I was putting these doors, which are supposed to be, oh, that's why they're not supposed to be there. Hi, I designed this and I know how it works. Well, and it's going to go off the wall because I lost a 1/4 inch of my overall, almost a 1/2 inch of my overall dimension. See, this gets tricky because I got to make sure that it's the same on both sides so they line up properly. We know it's 2 inches. So I'm thinking rather than go off of where it is on the wall, well, those are going to line up anyway if I do it right. So the idea here is it's going to be attached like this. And of course, this is going to be cut out. There's things I'm not thinking about. Anyway, and then on the in the actual temple itself, it's going to be right here. Argument for if you didn't do walls, you could make these same kind of doorways, but you put them on the cardboard base, and then you would just set it here to represent that there's a doorway there. But that's not the way I'm doing this. There's something is not sitting right with me on this door, and you have to make a decision on how fussy you want to be on these things. And I'm being a little bit fussy. Because one of the things I was going to do is I was going to line it up here, and I was going to make my cut and have my doorway. And then I would have been really pissed off when I put it up against the side and found out that my walls are sitting down low, and now my doorway in my cut is actually 3/4 of an inch too low. So I'm going to set this aside for now. I'm going to take a different approach. I'm in no way condemning Greg's pattern transfer thing. I think for design patterns and things like that, it's really good. I don't like it for something that's a little more precise like this. So I'm just going to set that aside and think about it. Think about what you've done. And we're going to do this other wall. This was kind of part of what he was talking about too, that Greg was talking about, is that you could save time on measuring out your blocking for all your bricks and things like that by just drawing your pattern and transferring it. But you still gotta draw it that first time. One thing I wanted to point out before I get started here is you can see that there are some very clear markings on here, wrinkles and things like that. So one downside to the dollar store foam core is you're going to get a lot of this kind of stuff where it gets wrinkled up, just bad things happen. Because this is the really wrinkled side, I'm going to draw on this side. But some of these textures, like, see if I can get this one to show up. Refocus. There we go. There's some cool textures in here that are nicely when you have your bricks in place. So, I mean, and we're going to beat the crap out of this with a styrofoam ball anyway. So what I'm doing is for my two sides is I'm picking out which side I want to draw on. Oftentimes what I'll do just to make sure I don't screw it up is I make an X on the part that I'm going to draw on that side. On the side I don't want to draw on. That way I go, oh, there's an X here. I didn't want to draw there. Okay. So one thing, now what I should do, these walls aren't going next to each other, so it won't matter. I really don't like that this wall got smashed in. That's going to be below the surface. So I'm going to say screw it, because I did these at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I cannot trust in their evenness. So I'm going to get my metal ruler here. Real quick, let me flip the camera up here so you can see my lovely face. Hey there, lovely internet. I realize it's we're about 90 minutes in. I want to thank everybody that's here hanging out. Looks like there's quite the lively discussion about gaming going on in the chat, and that's freaking awesome. So carry on with that while I blather on about this build here. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go with this. I'm not pushing through for BrigadeCon, so I have no reason to go, for 4 or 6 hours or something like that. So I'm going to do, for those of you that are here, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into something that I'm going to be doing soon. A video that I've been meaning to do for months. Those of you that follow Mini Terrain Domain may have noticed that there has not been a lot of crafting on this channel. In fact, there's been almost no crafting on this channel for the better part of the year. If you remember all the way back in January, I started a thing called Imagine, Build, Play, Win, where we were, as a community, coming up with the ideas to of what to build. I'd put some ideas out there, and then I would put it up for a vote, and then the community helped decide what I was going to build, and then I would do a live design show where I would talk about the encounter, and then what we could design. And my friend Greg Lewis actually won. He won the competition, the drawing actually, for the first terrain piece that I did, which you can see in the videos. And then the second one in February was a Gothic build. And that's kind of where things fell apart. And it was nothing to do with the community. It was nothing to do with the levels of the builds. It was, things were cooking along nicely. Unfortunately, the reason the January was so awesome is I had just lost my job. A job that I had had for about 7 years, and was notified that, well, it's been a year now since I was notified that in January I would no longer be employed. So, whatever. It was what it was. January, I did an awesome build. I used that time. And then in February, of course, I started looking for a job, and I had a really strong lead on a job that I really wanted, and I had a great interview with them. And then it was the next day, I think, or maybe 2 days later, and I was getting ready to start the planning session. Excuse me. And it's still up on the channel. It's for the Gothic build for Imagine, Build, Play, Win. And literally 60 seconds before I went on the air, mail. And it was from the place I had interviewed. And it said, "We absolutely loved you, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, we decided to go in another direction." Instant slam, completely deflated. And then I hit start broadcast, and I tried to push through that. And I haven't even gone back and watched it. And I know if you go back and watch that video, you'll hear it in my voice that the passion is gone. And then I spent a couple weeks trying to build some stuff, and I would show you it, but I finally decided to pitch it because I was never, not once in the entire time I was building it, was I happy with it. I was rushing the builds. I was taking shortcuts. Nothing looked Gothic. It was terrible design, terrible craftsmanship. The designs themselves, actually, some of the concepts I came up with were really good, but the actual execution was terrible. And it just made me feel like crap, to the point where I really wanted to build, but I felt like I hadn't really come clean with my audience. And so, long story, my emotions get in the way, and kind of cloud things, and I kept putting it off and kept putting it off and kept putting it off, to where I just wasn't building. I was running tons of games. You'll see tons of games that are on this channel here over the last year, but I haven't done a lot of building of stuff. Ask my home group. They haven't played on terrain in almost a year. So that's kind of what's been going on with the channel, and why there hasn't been much in the way of crafting. But this build here is really the first time I've sat down to try to build something in quite a while. And I'm getting that mojo back. That creativity is just spinning like crazy. And I am going to be, I'm going to finish this build up. I have an idea for let's see if I got one of these. If I can get, I probably won't use this board because I've already talked about how it kind of warps. But as a size, this is that mounting board stuff. Let's see how big it is. Looking at about 20. It's probably 15 by 20. So I'm imagining a swamp encounter with a small island with a Skyrim-esque ruin, and maybe there's some hags there or something, some spindly trees, some stepping stones, and it's just an encounter that takes place where they have to hags, and maybe kind of in 8-bit video game classic style. I'm thinking there's some stepping stones with a clear path in the middle here, and once they get in there, maybe get up here, black dragon or a black dragon appears. So that's one of the builds that I want to do, and I'm thinking that's going to be a water board, a swamp board. So I'm going to use resin to do some really cool swamp effects. Let me pop over to the chat real quick. Havoc, yeah, I'm doing so much better now. Thank you, I appreciate that. Havoc says, I hope you're doing well now. The Mapronomicon, I go through phases like that with the creation of my setting. I've gone years without touching my books. Chad Nick is here. What's up, my bearded man crush? What is up, my the man of 1,000 voices? Yeah, so yeah, I'm doing a lot better. It's, I've mentioned before, maybe I haven't on this channel, but I've talked in other forums about struggling with anxiety and depression and things like that, and that this hobby has been tremendous in helping me to have an outlet for that, and literally meeting over 100 new friends online. So anyway, so yeah, there's the idea for that swamp encounter. I've got an idea for a ship based on, I think it's called the Auspice from Heroic Maps, which is actually the model that the Riptide for Riptide Raid from Absolute Tabletop was based on. I'm going to build that with 1 inch. I'm going to increase it by 25% and build it full scale with removable decks, so that you'll actually be able to play around in the space. But they've also just released a ghost ship called the Remorseless or the Remorseful. That's a little bit smaller ship, but still going to be pretty good size, and it has 3 decks. And I'm going to make that to go with that whole set. So, and then I've got some ideas for some much smaller stuff. I want to do some of the tutorials, like some people asked about, for for the updates on how to do the coffee ground flocking. I realize there's people in here that that may not have seen this before. I always try to show this. This is the first and only ship that I've built. So this is kind of the gold standard for me. This is the Evangeline. There's a video on my channel that is a tour of this ship. Made entirely out of the same craft foam that I'm working with, except for this stuff. But all of the interior structure, all of the hull, the decking is all fly in there. The decking is all done out of this foam core, textured to look like wood. Yeah, this thing measures. Let's measure the ship from stern to bowsprit. This one is from the very edge of the stern to the tip of the bowsprit is just shy of 24 inches. I'm anticipating the Auspice or the Riptide will come in at around. I'm anticipating it to come in at around 30 to 36 inches. So it's going to be considerably longer than this one. And this one from the water line up to the lower part of the deck is only a couple inches. I'm looking about 4 or 5 inches up here. So the riptide is going to be much taller than that because the forecastle and I can't think what it's called now. It's this back section will lift off separately to reveal the underside areas. Then you'll lift up the next section to reveal a primary cargo deck, or rather like crew quarters and stuff like that. And then there's an even lower deck that will have the cargo holds in it. And all of these ships are going to be used in a much bigger board that's about 30 by 40 or something like that, 25 by 40, for a massive naval setup. That I'd like to do, hopefully be able to use some of Absolute Tabletop's naval rules at some point. Anyway, awesome, man. I figured I'd pop in. Almost said poop there and see what you're working on. I appreciate it, Chad. And Balance been there. That was my 2015. Yeah, it happens. I'll say that you teaming up with the supplements and building stuff to a company supplement release is a fantastic product placement marketing. Want to play this awesome setting? How about playing it in a fully fleshed out game space? Yeah, I did. You can see some videos I did this year. I said I didn't build anything, but I totally forgot about that. I teamed up with Absolute Tabletop and built the Civ encounter from Sewers Under Sandwall. That was an awesome build. I learned some cool stuff. It was fun to build. Painted a couple of Reaper Sharkmen minis, and I gave those away. We did a drawing with Absolute Tabletop. They gave away some supplements, and wound up giving it away. And yes, Chad, this is the Bane. The roof is the Bane. This is a dice tower that I have been working on all year for Michael Barker. It started it when it was kind of in the comments of a Provokers game. He was wearing braces for his carpal tunnel. Gregory Lewis is in the chat. Greg, welcome. I was talking you up a storm earlier. Your ears must have been burning. Anyway, this is an original design by me, and those are all individually laid tiles. And you know what? I got my dice right over here, so let's tilt the camera down so you can see the way. And what I did, this is ultimately going to be glued down. I spent some time to actually come on, get this light over here. I spent some time to actually design this and then put this foam down in here so that on the insides there's no place for the dice to catch, so that they don't get caught up inside the actual tower. And then make sure that's so it's basically a triple slide. They come down at this angle, hit the next deck, come down at this angle, and then they roll out. And ultimately, there's actually going to be, and I'm keeping this a secret from Barker and everybody until it's done, but I have an actual rolling area that this is going to sit on. Very highly designed. But here are, let's take a fistful of dice, small fistful, and there it is. Let's roll a d20. Get an 18. Let's roll with advantage. Good thing, because I rolled a nat 1. This die, these two dice have been waffling like crazy. But it accommodates a very, Barker likes to play some Fate. So let's throw some Fate dice in there. can see it can handle quite a bit of dice. I'm going to have a little design at the top here. Give it a little bit of a stylized look. This is a hit die that will not fit in there. I thought that one fit. I have a smaller D30 here. That fits in there and rolls away. 25. But the idea was that you don't have to do a lot of rolling of the dice. And it's just going to look cool. I'm very proud of this one, but it takes freaking forever to lay these tiles. I used to work in roofing, so I'm applying some of the principles there. You can kind of see the dormer, the peak shingles and stuff. Anyway, yeah, so that's another thing that I'm working on. So the creativity is there. The inspiration is back. And yeah, so we're building some stuff. We got 7 people here watching. You know what? I'm going to show you a couple more things. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm getting really tired. I haven't been sleeping much this week. And I think what I'm going to do is, in the previous video, I showed how to lay out the wall. And I think to make the next video move along to the next cooler steps, before I film again, I'm going to do the other long section of wall. And I'm going to do the short sections of wall because they're just shorter sections of this. And I'm going to get everything ready for doing the doorways. So for those that are joining, I'd already tried one method, but to make these door archways. So in the next video, we'll do another live craft. I've decided this entire build is going to be all in. So what I'm going to do is I'll get those walls ready. I'm going to true up some of this. I've got some edging problems because I was tired and rushing through it. So I'm going to true everything up here. And then the next video will be how to apply the doors, getting the walls put in place. Once the walls are in place, we can do the start building the pieces out for the altar that's going to be up here. All of that should go nicely in one video. And then I'll probably do a separate video for painting and detailing. Now, I have a trick that I do when I paint that will allow me, even with doing a full black bombing, that I can do the whole thing painted in black. And by the time I'm done with it, very shortly after I can be painting my next coats, I can do a full 100% paint job on this in just an hour or two. Because I have this craft level, I don't even know. I think it used to be my wife's when she used to do scrapbooking stuff. But it's a heat gun. It's not super high temp. But what I do is I put my paint on and then I can just and dry everything. It does get a little tricky with the black bombing if it's too wet. And I'm probably gonna black bomb everything before we do the painting video, because honestly, do you need me to show you how to paint something black? So yeah, there's that. And then I've got some, I'm hoping actually by the time I get to the painting video in a couple weeks, there's a couple techniques that I want to do as kind of like their own mini tutorials that I'll break off of this and maybe put them on the channel on their own. I'm going to do some vines. There's a couple methods for doing the vines that I want to show. One that DM Scotty did using twine and white glue. You can, and flocking, and you can make them look like vines. There's another method I've been toying with where you take and squirt hot glue into water and create tendrils. In fact, it's in one of those boxes. I have a roper that I made last year that, screw it. That's kind of what this video is turning into. I want to show you guys some of my stuff. I want to show you some things that I've made that maybe I haven't shown in a while, or, you know, we've got some new people. So, sorry if my pants are falling down. Nobody wants to see that, right? All of these boxes back here are filled with various miniatures. I've got a ton of Mage Knight and Hero Clicks over here. This is the one I was looking for. Yeah, so I do a lot of, I showed this earlier, I'll show again, some of my players' minis. A lot of these are repurposed. Repurposed Mage Knight. I've got a bunch of oh no, did I show Plumber's Crack? Oh well, you know, it happens. Anyway, I got a bunch of the Hobbit miniatures that are in a cigar box back there, but this was a Mage Knight figure that I just based with a little bit of sand and flock, and I kind of touched up the I don't want to focus. I touched up the cloak with some light stuff, light paints. Showed the wizard with the homemade coffee flock, Ella Nelson. Same thing here. Another one where I just based a mini. Honestly, I didn't paint any of these. These were pre-painted. Now this one is fun because I have a character that's playing an elven monk, and I wanted to find her a decent figure. So I grabbed the Mage Knight figure, and originally it had a sickle. But then I'm not even going to try to explain how this happened. But Artemis Entreri and Jarlaxle Bainry from Brigadeconn showed up to bring the drow back down to Menzoberranzan, and she saw Artemis's dagger, and she said, I want to steal the dagger from Artemis and replace it with my own. And I didn't even really have stats. I used some old, like 3.5 stats for Artemis in some old, even abilities like Sense Motive kind of thing. And she freaking nat 20 on a check to Sleight of Hand. And I even rolled a Sense Motive on him, and he rolled low enough that she was able to do it. And for quite a while, she had Artemis Entreri's dagger. These are from the Forgotten Realms Drizzt Do'Urden books. So that's actually the hand of another mini. I may even have taken the dagger and attached it to the hand. And then this hand, it was from another figure that had a bow, and I put that on there. And for a while, she had a quiver on her back. But her characters recently required these metallic wings. So I think this is from a Hero Quest Hawk girl or whatever. And I just attached that on there. So that's for her. This is for the Warlock. This is the wizard that teleports a lot. This is for our halfling. This is just flocked. Some of these I just flocked up Wizards of the Coast pre-painted minis just to give their bases a little better look. This is our Kender. Yes, we have a Kender in the party. This is our barbarian human. We get another halfling rogue. I think at one point we have like 3 rogues in the party. This was a wizard that they went up against. This was our dwarf cleric, and then there was another person I didn't have a mini for, so he gets an old crossbows and catapults mini. So that's those. Now, some of the stuff I just wanted to show. Some of these I may have shown at different times. A lot of this stuff is things that were for the old pyramid. Here's the roper that I made. The main part of the roper is sculpted from pink polyfoam. Its teeth are toothpicks. There's a marble for the eye. All the texturing is done in actually, you know what? If Greg is still in here, Greg saw a lot of this stuff firsthand at last year's Grand Con because he came and played in my Tomb of the Mummy Lord build. But yeah, these roper tendrils are actually just hot glue put in water. And that's how I did it. Detail on the painting on the eye here. I just did some different techniques with that. Honestly, I can show some of that at some point. It's hard to explain because I just kind of try it and see if it works. This is one of the first Reaper minis that I painted, the Minotaur. I'm not great at painting minis, but completely painted and flocked that one. It turned out pretty decent. There's some things I would have done a little different. Another sneak peek. Stay tuned to this channel, and in the not too distant future, sometime in the next month or so, there will be, well, there's that mini I was looking for. There will be I will be painting a miniature with a prominent member of the community and somebody from another channel. We are going to paint the same miniature. So stay tuned for that announcement. This was a ghost, another Reaper mini, and then I put it on a base. A little bit of flocking. This was a ghost from the dungeon, Tomb of the Mummy Lord. This is also a Reaper mummy. You can go figure, Tomb of the Mummy Lord, right? These were some kind of golem. They're treasure golems that I made. Basically, I make this custom. Actually, I think it's, where is it? Yes, I have on the channel. I have a treasure tutorial. This is my mixture. It's a new mixture that incorporates gold, silver, copper, and jewels, and allows me to create treasure piles that look pretty awesome. So these were all over the tomb of the Mummy Lord. This is one of the larger tentacles that I made, and then I had to cut it down. I've never done a tutorial on this, and I really want to show how to do these broken ice pieces. But these were ice tentacles. They're basically, stat-wise, it was a reskinned, what do you call them? Odiug. I don't know if, can somebody tell me, is the stream getting really glitchy? I've got a window down below. It looks like the stream got really glitchy. If somebody could let me know in the chat, that'd be great. I might be having some internet connection issues. I'm hooked up to a hard line, but who knows? Yeah, some more repainted miniatures. Oh, this is the crew of the Evangeline. I had this old Pirates game. Thanks, Matt. Just a bit laggy. These, I didn't do any painting to them. I don't even know what they are. There's something from Mage Knight. I found a bunch of them that were similar. And these guys. But what I really like about these figures and the way I did it is with this old little pirate dice game, it came with these little metal pieces of 8. And that's what I used for bases. I thought it was a really clever, fun way to make bases for these little pirates. And there's no significance between which ones are on which bases. So I was saying, this, I basically just coated it in PVA glue and then dipped it in the treasure mixture. And then when they went into the treasure room, before the Mummy Lord was killed, if they tried to touch any of the treasure, it would come to life as a treasure golem. And believe me, there was tons of treasure to tempt them as they came into the main room of the Mummy Lord. And I show how to make these elsewhere on the channel. So, pieces of 8, pennies and quarters, same difference. Yeah, I want to do like a really big treasure golem sometime. Get him out of there. He doesn't really belong in there. Oh, I've showed this on the channel before. This was an original sculpt that I did. There's actually in the video, I think it shows full pictures of how I built the thing. From actually at its heart, it is one of these skulls. And then I cut out the center and put a marble for the eye. And then all of this is homemade air dry clay. And I did some more, a lot of buildup with air dry clay and hot glue to get the texturing. And then, little balls and then some painting. Hey, I might try doing another one of these sometime, especially now that Volo's Guide to Monsters is out. And there's a lot of great new, lore on beholders and different types of eye stalks and stuff like that. Chad mentioned earlier about partnering up with Absolute Tabletop. One of their first their very first supplement they ever put out was Goblin go-karts, and it had a go-kart in there called Fast Kill that they described, and I thought I want to build that. And if you head over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/mini terrain domain, there are several photos. There are several photos showing the process for this, but I actually designed and built this entire thing in, I think, 6 hours. I started it while they were doing the Absolute Tabletop launch video. And this rock on the back is one of those things I do logistically because the ram prow on the front made it very heavy. And I thought, well, that would really happen. So they need a rock on the back, and it helped stabilize it. And it's actually on an actual HO truck for a train. So you could actually put this on HO track. And I'd like to build some little arena or set piece that goes along with this. That'd be a fun little build. But yeah, head over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/mini terrain domain. And I've got a bunch of goblins in here and a cool little photo shoot that I did. Originally, I had some miniature arrows that were stuck in the shield, which is actually a repurposed piece from a crossbows and catapults. It was a flag marker or something like that. So, yeah. We're hitting about the 2-hour mark here in where I am in the Midwest. And as I said, I'm pretty tired. The long and the short of it is I don't think I really did a whole lot for the project today. But we did have a lot of great discussion. So I think I'm going to do the walls. So for part 2, we'll just show how to do all the assembly on that. Get into the doors and start getting into painting and final design stuff. Things to look for coming up on Mini Terrain Domain. Of course, there's going to be a lot more games. A week from tomorrow, I will be running an adventure at 8 a.m. on Saturday, the 12th of November. Right here on the channel live. So join us in the live chat. The game is called Professor Pappy Van Winkle's Magical Miracle Beard Oil. A mysterious beard oil salesman shows up in town, and 5 adventurers are tasked to investigate his peculiar potions. It's going to be a fun adventure. Very lighthearted, playing 3rd level characters. And if you want to know how you can get in one of these games that I run, head over to Absolute Tabletop official group on Facebook. Yes, Absolute Tabletop is a publishing company, but this is more than that. This is a community. And we've recently kind of started a challenge where myself and many others in the community are running lots of games, and we're committed to getting a lot of new players that we've never played with before. If you have been there, have seen on the channel lately, there's a trend for several of us, probably about a dozen to 2 dozen of us, the same people keep playing each other's games, and we've grown comfortable, and I think we've unintentionally ostracized a greater part of the community. So we've taken it upon ourselves to invite you to join in our games. So, and that's where I organize my games and run them, is through the Absolute Tabletop official group Facebook page. And I've committed to at least once a month running a game with trying to get people I've never played with before. It doesn't mean you have to be new or have never played. It just means I want to give more people a chance. And then you're going to see, a lot of other games where I might take 2 or 3 people that I already know and then bring in 1 or 2 people. And I run the gamut of stuff that I run. We run a lot in Absolute Tabletop's Worlds, and we run a lot of stuff that we just make up on the fly. The beard oil game came up out of a post of somebody posted their beard oil product. And somebody said, well, that's not gaming related. And I said, here, let me make it gaming related. That kind of a thing. So if you want to play games and you want to play in one of my games, Absolute Tabletop official group is the place to do it. Some other things. This is Volo's Guide to Monsters, special limited edition cover artwork. And probably tomorrow or Sunday, I am going to do a short review, like a first impressions review of this book. I want to do more reviews on RPG products and things like that. So if you keep an eye out, you'll see reviews on Absolute Tabletop products. You'll see reviews on products like this, possibly things like Cubicle 7's Adventures in Middle-earth. A lot of people do their reviews on these different kind of things, and I'm sure even now you can probably go on YouTube and find reviews of this book, but each person has a different take on it. 5th edition is my 5th edition is my first time being kind of all in. Sorry, somebody got greasy hands on my book. Oh, good. It does kind of wipe off. Yes, I know I'm being a bit anal about it, but I told him to wipe his... Oh, maybe it's my hands. It might be because it's really cold out here, too. Anyway, yeah, you get different perspectives on those. So keep an eye out for this. Yeah, everybody got that copy. Well, for as long as they have them, it's a special limited edition. They're only doing the 1 print run at hobby shops, and you're seeing so much of it now because... it's the only one that's available. The regular version isn't officially available until November 15th. Wizards Play Network stores were allowed to sell theirs today. So you see a lot of that. And I've had conversations and chats with a few people in the Facebook groups talking about our impressions on it. I'm absolutely loving what I'm seeing on the Beholders. There's a lot of great new monstrous races for players. There's over, I think, 90 new monsters in there. So, yeah, watch this channel for a review on that. If there is anything that you want to see me do a tutorial on, if you want to know more about something you've seen me build, or if you have any questions or you just want to chat, whatever, here's how you can do that. Head over to facebook.com/miniterraindomain. Give me a like on the page there, send me a message or post in there. Look for me as Jacob Norman in the Absolute Tabletop official group on Facebook. I'm also in the Tabletop RPG one-shot group. Occasionally you see me on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition on Facebook. Or you can simply email me at miniterraindomain@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. All right. I I want to thank everybody that stopped in tonight to hang out. I want to give a shout out to Nelson for popping in on this impromptu realization that this is almost my 3-year anniversary of the channel. That was in large part kind of spur in the sides from Nelson back in the day. So thanks, Nelson, for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Thanks to the Mappernomicon, Nathan, Gregory stopped by, Brian, Alan, Amanda was here earlier. Havoc Bringer guy. God, so many people that stopped by. I'm trying to remember everybody that was in here. But seriously, Chad, everybody, I truly appreciate it. Seriously, you know, I talked a little while ago, about 45 minutes ago or so. I talked about the depression earlier. Tabletop gaming is a wonderful cure for depression, and you, the community, are a wonderful cure for depression. I love you guys. I love this community. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll join me for the next one. I want to get this build done, so there's a good possibility that I'll be doing another hangout next weekend. Again, you can keep up to date on when these are going to happen by following, either subscribe to this channel if you're not already, and checking out on the Facebook page. So now I'm starting to repeat myself. Nathan says I need to get some sleep. Yes, I love you too. I love you all, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I'm going to get some much needed sleep. I'm going to get like 3 days worth of sleep based on what I've gotten the last 3 days. Get all rested up, and yeah, I will see you around. I hope to hear from you on the Facebooks, on the YouTubes, on the emails, and all the places. I wish you all happy gaming and happy crafting. I've been Mini Terrain Domain. Mitted.